Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vaga Muradian here at the Air Force Association's annual Air, Space, and Cyber Conference and Trade Show, largest gathering every year of Air Force leaders, U.S. Air Force leaders from around the world. Our coverage here is sponsored by Elbit Systems of America, L3 Technologies, and Leonardo DRS. And we are talking to Brigadier General Mike Schmidt, who is the Program Executive Officer for C3I Networks. I can't imagine joining us from Hanscom Air Force Base, where you're new in the job. I think we saw each other at Fort Belvoir a little while ago. So congratulations on your career, taking off as it has. So you came from bombers and fighters, and now you're doing really easy stuff. That's certainly not the focus of the Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force. I'm joking. Yeah. The look on your face was so multi-domain battle and command and control has been a priority for the chief. He was the first of the service chiefs to really focus on, hey, let's get this architecture right. Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing to support that and how you're connecting those initiatives with those of the other services, because General Goldfein from the very beginning has been like, look, this is more powerful if it's an architecture-wide, that all the services are on this to maximize not only what they're bringing to the joint fight, but how we all communicate together. Talk to us about your critically important piece in realizing this ambition.
Right, so I think PEO C3I has a huge role in the Chief's vision in multi-domain command and control. Now, General Saltzman kind of is running that from an overall Air Force architecture top-down approach. Certainly my job and my director's job, my great team of folks out there, I would say we're really focused right now on the bottoms-up side of the Chief's vision, connecting all the disparate systems that we have out there. You know, for instance, we have the Bacon platform, a business jet, or on the Global Hawk, the Bacon capability. That's just an example of Band-Aids that, really good Band-Aids that I think we put out there to connect our systems out there. Now, why do we have to put a Bacon kind of a program out there? That's a good question. We developed these systems in Stovepipes, and we're kind of stuck with what we got. So we're engineering ways to make them communicate in the battle space. And we have a lot of systems like Bacon. In fact, we just delivered one called Machete, which is kind of a ground version of Bacon, a really neat program. But one of my focus areas is really to how do we, in the future, not end up where we're at today in terms of these stovepipe programs that we have. For instance, our data links. F-22 has their data link, IFDL. F-35 has their MADL. We have Link 16 out there. Our foreign partners have Link 11. How did we get to a situation where all these things don't talk to each other? Well, one of the reasons I believe is because in the early 90s, in fact, we invented Link 16 in the government at Hanscom Air Force Base. After a while, we kind of pushed all this stuff to the contractors, and I want to get back to being the aerial network center of excellence where the government owns the data, owns the architecture, and so we don't get in another situation like that. But we are where we are, and we're focused really a lot on pulling a lot of that data together and pulling those streams of data together. And in the terrestrial, so when you talk about MDC2, you know, there's definitely a space node to the whole architecture. There's an aerial node, and there's a terrestrial node. We certainly have a lot of work in C3I in the aerial node and the terrestrial node. So I'm very focused on delivering new cyber capabilities, new crypto capabilities to all of our systems out there, being able to secure the data as we transfer the data is a big part of what we're doing. Miniaturizing crypto and the way we pass data and encrypt data. And then, like I said, in the aerial node, I'm trying to set standards, trying to get to a place where the government is owning that architecture again. But those are kind of the areas where we're really focused on trying to support multi-domain command and control, and I think we're poised to help the Chief's vision out here.
When you look at, you're also supporting Will Roper. Dr. Will Roper is the Air Force Acquisition Executive. He's got his century goals and a whole series of other ambitious efforts to try to take as much cost out of programs and to buy time, right, to increase that cycle. Clearly, as you mentioned, one of the things that we got into is that when the government sort of outsourced everything, every contractor was able to put, you want it as proprietary as possible so you can't get dropped from that architecture. So then you're in a universe of, everything is proprietary and very hard to work with. Good for the contractor, potentially not as good for the customer. All of these things are cultural changes or long-term cultural changes. Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing as a program executive officer on something that's extremely complicated, multi-layered. There are legacy things that we can't let go of. You mentioned Link 11. For some people, that's the steam-powered connectivity system of the
Link
past.
16, yeah.
But Link 16 also, I was trying to make a little bit of a joke there. But you've got to maintain them because some of our allies are on it, even though we're not on it anymore. Talk to us a little bit about the culture change that you're driving, because at the end of the day, that's what this is, to try to get the speed, but also how you move everybody along, including the contractor, to be like, hey, look, we're going into a different universe. I'm going to be standing up and playing my own role in this. And also the training, and that goes to the training and the capability of your people, right? Do they have those expert program management skills to deliver on this? So talk to us about the culture change that has to happen here for us to get to where everybody wants, which is speed, less money.
Well, Vago, you've hit on a huge number of issues right there in that question. To start, so let's just talk about the speed and where Dr. Roper is trying to go, where the Chief and Secretary are trying to go, which is just fantastic. We're talking about trying to capture the time savings and all of the improvements we're making by having, honestly, it's a different mindset. We talk about, Dr. Roper talks about using Section 804 authorities that the Congress has given us, but it's not really just that. It's just our mindset on how we develop acquisition strategies to deliver capabilities. And the new mindset is, hey, we're not going to wait for all the requirements to stack up and then kind of a waterfall. We're going to go do this, go develop this thing for 4 years, then we're going to test it for a year, then we're going to deliver it, and by then, even if it does all work, it still is old technology. And so we're definitely shifting the mindset to, hey, an incremental delivery of capability now is better than a big delivery of capability you hope is the right one in the future. And it's just that mindset shift that is, I think, making a big deal across all our programs. That's where I'm pushing everybody to deliver. I talk about deliver, innovate, and grow within my portfolio a lot. Deliver means I'm always talking about delivering capability to the warfighter. That should be your thought every day. That's why we're here. That's why we come to work. That's why we get paid, especially as acquisition folks. Our job is to make our commanders in the field's acquisition dreams come true. It really is our job. Innovate. Not all of us are innovators. Some are better at taking an innovative idea and turning it into reality, and some are better at coming up with that idea. Rarely in business do you have the same mindset in a single person, and so we're trying to bring out the innovators in our organization and match them up with the people that can turn that into a real product. And by grow, you hit on the people part. When I say grow, I'm always talking about growing the people, the individuals within our organization. Our benches need to be deeper. We need to have time to mentor our junior folks and bring them up. I don't feel like we're doing a good enough job today of mentoring that I thought I got when I was a junior officer. It's not because people aren't, it's just because we're spread kind of thin, and we went to this model in the late 90s where we really ripped our acquisition core apart, and now we're trying to build it back, and so hopefully we can get back to really growing our bench strength and growing our replacement units for when I retire and all of us, in my age group retire. So those are the things that we're really focused on, and I'm excited about it.
You mentioned requirements. Do you think that for supportability reasons, right? I mean, one of the challenges with requirements is, hey, we want to keep it light, we want to keep it lively, but then you find out it causes a whole bunch of other, in a mechanical parlance, right? Oh, well, we're going to go to a whole, new different kind of ammunition, or we're going to go to a whole new different, engines or other wheels and everything else, and then you realize, wow, I've just incurred a logistical headache and supportability headache. Now everything is about contested airfields, contested bases. You're going to have to support fight under fire. That means you're going to have to supply. General Miller's folks at the Mobility Command have got to get parts to this. The less parts you get out there, the better, and the more streamlined your systems. Do you think that you need to make a trade-off and say, hey, look, here's something that's in the inventory. We're going to take a risk and keep it, how do you work in this so that from a sustainability standpoint, because, the software part of it is relatively easy, the hardware part is the challenge. How do you strike that balance to make sure that whatever you're fielding out there from a requirements perspective has that supportability and life cycle cost that's sort of built into that equation from the beginning?
Well, that's a good question, and you have to ask that question on everything that you're fielding, because sometimes we say, how are we going to support this thing for the next 30 years when it might be something that might be cheaper and better to throw it away. Other things, like your new fighter, yeah, you got to figure out how are we going to sustain this thing for the for the life of generations and generations. But I really think we need to think a little bit more about what things can we really afford to throw away to our in this IT world. The lifespan of most of our IT equipment isn't very long, 3 years ish. And so maybe the mindset needs to be a little bit more of a, well, how do I make sure that I have a refresh every 3 years versus how am I going to sustain that for 20 years? One of the major programs we're working towards is Enterprise IT as a Service. Enterprise IT as a Service, we're just getting going right now. We're going through a risk reduction phase. The risk reduction phase really is a try everything and take risks phase. That's what it's all about. It is, we all have a standard that we expect at home. I expect that same standard in the Air Force in terms of my network performance. I also expect it to be more secure than my home network. So those things come together, and that's where we tend to have some serious discussions. But you know what? If USAA or Bank of America can trust the commercial networks that are out there with some of their security patches that are in there, then let's us take a look at that as well. So we're just embarking on this Enterprise IT as a Service thing, and part of Enterprise IT as a Service is going to be, you know what? Our machines and our network should be refreshed at the commercial pace. And honestly, I don't want to have to tell someone, you know what, your computer's good today. No, you get to get it. No, we need to have a system in place that lets us all have up-to-date technology on a regular basis, and honestly at a cost point that is less than what we're paying today is what we're expecting. But are we there yet? No, we're just embarking on this risk reduction phase that I'm super excited about.
There's, one of the things that you mentioned, and by the way, excellent segue, because I was going to be like, hey, let me ask him about IT as a service, and you brought that in. But one of the challenges has been, and you're right, there's a major culture shift. We saw it at DAU years ago, where the program managers were way ahead of this curve and saw where it was going. Obviously, at the time, Secretary Carter was working on this, but also Frank Kendall was sort of focused on, hey, how do we change this? How do we grow those internal skills? But talk to us a little bit about what that right balance is, right? Everybody's looking at IT as a service. Historically, the services wanted to own things, as opposed to now going into a whole new universe where, what's the right balance in terms of what the service, what's the right way to think about this as you work to institute it? The contractors are all looking at how the Air Force is going to look at this, about what it wants to own, where it wants its people involved in the process. Can you give us a little bit of a sense on what this architecture probably needs to be like to give you that agility, to give you the cost, but then to also have that kind of security, surety, and hands-on approach that the Air Force likes to have with major systems?
So what do we need to own? We absolutely need to own our data. Our data is our data, whether we continue on with a specific contractor or not. So we have to own the data. The hardware is kind of a good question now. If I'm not satisfied with a particular contractor and need to move on to another one, I need to know that there's not a big hardware cost that I'm going to incur as we transition, and we're kind of working through that structure. But the data is unquestioned. We need to own our data no matter what happens. And I say that because we're trying to create an environment within Enterprise IT as a Service that gives us all the security and the government oversight of that security that we expect and have today. But at the same time, have it be a very competitive commercial market in our different product lines. So whether that be the network as a service, or the end user devices as a service, or the service desk as a service, those are things that we want to continue to compete over time. So to me, as a service isn't hiring contractor X to just replace all of our government employees with contractors and being in charge of it all. That is not Enterprise IT as a Service. That is just a commercial service. Enterprise IT as a Service is going after competition in each of the areas that I just talked about, continuous competition in each of the areas that I just talked about, and pushing for innovation across all of those areas. If the commercial industry is going to get it, I expect to be the first one, to get it. And so that's how we're trying to structure Enterprise IT as a Service, competitions within each of those categories that can go on. And if you're performing well, awesome. And if you're not performing well, we're going to continue to compete and look for someone else who wants to jump in the game. And that's how you're going to see us roll out this risk reduction effort, and then as well as when we roll into the broader production effort and have all of industry competing.
We're about to get the hook from Derek appropriately. He's trying to keep you on schedule. I've got two questions. I'll try to ask you the more important one and then maybe give you a quick hit on the last one, which is artificial intelligence. We were at the DARPA 60th anniversary conference week before last, announced a $2 billion 5-year program to develop sort of third wave AI technology. You know, you're the guy downstream who's going to be the user of this. Talk to us about where artificial intelligence fits into this. Where do you need artificial intelligence? What kind of artificial intelligence do you need as somebody who's just managing these, everything from battle networks to just desktop IT service?
Yeah, so you know, we talked about multi-domain.
Or quantum. Throw quantum in there if you want to, but that's a little more
it's
out
a little
there.
more out there. So I'll talk a little bit more artificial intelligence. So you know, we talked about multi-domain command and control. We also have, you know, similar efforts, related efforts, I think, going on in C4 integration, integrating all of those C4 assets in ABMS, trying to figure out what is the future of ABMS when we don't have some of those platforms that probably aren't survivable in the future out there. How do we connect all that information? And as we bring all those information streams together, we have a number of neat programs going on to bring that information into a single place. And then how do you take advantage of all that information coming together and to give you predictions as to where should I point my sensors? What might be happening over in this part of the world, to kind of focus, you know, data to decision. The speed with which you make decisions is going to drive the future of warfare. And I love you know, when our chief talks about that and the ability to make decisions faster than your enemy. That's what this is all about. That's what these artificial intelligence tools are going to give us, and I think are starting to give us. And I just think there's so much growth in that area. It's really incredible, and I'm really excited about it.
Last thing, cybersecurity, big priority obviously for Secretary Mattis. The entire military leadership has been talking about it. A lot of high-profile breaches have happened. Talk to us a little bit about the cyber piece, and are we underestimating the sheer cost associated with enterprise-wide getting us up to that level of cybersecurity we need? There's a little bit of a reluctance to impose cybersecurity regulations on contractors. Everybody's now recognizing that was a mistake. Talk to us a little bit about that and how much investment has got to get put aside for this, given that it's a massive task.
So I don't have an answer for you on how much is enough. I can say that we have a lot of neat programs going on, one called Unified Platform, which is trying to connect the disparate cyber systems of the various services together in support of U.S. Cyber Command. And that will, you know, the first, you know, we've been doing this in pockets all over the DoD, and I think building a common structure across the board will help us figure out, okay, where are we really at with all of our capability and where are our gaps still? I think that is actually even connected with some of our enterprise IT as a service risk reduction stuff, in that we are really starting to see how the commercial, industry, but the ones that just care just as much about the protection of their data, how they do business, and so I think the meshing of the lessons learned across the board is going to drive us to a better place. Now, how much that costs, I couldn't tell you, but I can tell you that because we've been doing this disparately to date, that I have a feeling that we're going to get more efficient in terms of the way we spend our dollars in the cyber protection area. And by the way, on this enterprise IT as a service thing that I didn't really talk about, one of the side benefits of that whole thing is we have all these airmen, great airmen in our comm squadrons that spend all of their day making sure our NIPR networks, our basic Air Force AF networks. We're going to have the opportunity to repurpose them back to the mission defense teams, and that's going to be a huge help to the manpower side of the challenges of defending our network. So I'm excited about that and seeing all this stuff come together.
Brigadier General Michael Schmidt, the Program Executive Officer for C3I Networks at Hanscom Air Force Base. Sir, thanks very much. Absolute pleasure.
All right, it was fun. Appreciate it.